Thank you. Welcome all. Thank you for coming. As Joseph mentioned, my name is Gideon. I'm thrilled to help try and moderate the rest of this session. So looking around, I think we've got a mixture of some fintech fanatics, some people involved maybe in traditional finance, and hopefully start thinking about the new one. And hopefully we're going to have a combination of all three here tonight. But first I'd like to kind of briefly try and set the scene, and I'm going to try and do it actually in a very quick way because I think we need to make up a bit of time. But, you know, cryptocurrency, it's a decentralized digital money that's based on blockchain technology. Most people of you, particularly within this audience, are going to be familiar with this, the versions being Bitcoin, Ethereum, or even any of these strange ones circulating online. But when we look at, say, crypto in its relation to blockchain, which is the open distributed ledger, I guess for many of you, these terms are not new. If anything, blockchain started, I think, making waves back in 1991 in a research paper known as How to Timestamp a Digital Document. So apart from being a very riveting paper, blockchain's been alive now well enough to finish school, graduate, and make serious inroads into the work promotion place. So a lot of you might be asking, you know, why are we still talking about it? And a lot of this really comes back to adoption. And within the innovation and venture space, we often look at technology adoption as the process of accepting, integrating, and using new technology within society. And with several stages, I guess, associated with the people who might use that. The point is, it's great coming up with a groundbreaking idea, but it actually takes a lot more to be able to get, say, the community, the businesses, the institutions, and the regulators on board so that it's actually going to be used today. A lot of the speakers that we're going to be talking to often, I guess, work within that future kind of land, and often have to struggle and kind of create, building these bridges between today's infrastructure, today's mindset, and today's consumers into that new world of the possible. And it's no easy feat. So over the next 3 sessions, we're going to be looking into 3 main areas. The first is we'll be looking into blockchain and how it's matured since its inception, and the change, I guess, of jobs within that particular space. Secondly, we're going to be visiting cryptocurrency, and rather than talk about the valuation of it, which I think a lot of the talks do tend to be around with crypto nowadays, we're actually going to be going back to basics. We're going to be talking a bit more about its purpose, why it was originally kind of created. Could it really be the plumbing of the future financial system? And you know, what are the difficulties associated with concept and practice? And finally, as seen by the header, we're going to try and squeeze in as many buzzwords as possible. We're going to be visiting financial opportunities within the Metaverse, so hopefully trying to kind of round off all 3. So each of these sections should have some time for Q&A, so please do try and keep your questions to the end of each particular session, and failing that, you'll probably have a chance to ambush the speakers as there are drinks later. So, introducing the first session of today, it's going to be around blockchain, and without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who I'm thrilled to actually re-invite back to TechelevateUK. It's Nguyễn, the founder of CFTE, who's going to take us into the changing world of blockchain and jobs. I feel like we need some elevator music just for the transition.
How do I put this?
Yes,
like this. This looks very strange. I don't think it's like this.
I think it is.
Should be closer to my
mic to your...
Yeah, the mic to the cheek.
Yeah? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it on?
Very good.
It's turned on.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
And can I have the slides?
Yes.
Okay, while we start, while we wait for the slides, first, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. And today we'll be talking about one thing, which is how to be part of the future of digital assets. And the reason why I chose this topic is that whether you're an entrepreneur, or you're an investor, or you want to work in that space, actually it is quite an important decision. When you choose a space, you know, whether it was the internet 20 years ago, whether it's fintech a few years ago, whether it's digital assets today, actually it's quite an important decision. If you're in the right space, actually, then it's quite easy for you. If it's the wrong space, actually, you spend a lot of time working and you might not see a lot of results. So that's the reason why I chose this topic, which is how to be part of the future of digital assets. To introduce myself quickly, I'm Nguyễn, co-founder of CFTE. I've been an entrepreneur, banker, and entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, I was CEO of UKB. That was a while ago, and UKB was LinkedIn, but 5 years before LinkedIn. So very wrong in terms of timing. And so we'll talk about timing today. And what I learned from UKB is that at that time, I was CEO of a company, which was a tech company that had raised $20 million. And when the internet crash came, I had no clue of what was happening. So I'll try to share a bit about this experience. After that, I went to banking, was a managing director at Citi. Quite different, was head of macro structuring. And then for the last 5 years, I've been co-founder of CFTE. And CFTE is a global platform for fintech education. And our objective is education at scale. How do we make sure that everybody around the world can have access to very good education to thrive in this new world of fintech? Can I, or should I use it from here? Okay, sure. So, talking about the future of digital assets, first, is there a future for digital assets? I think it's an important question to ask. And perhaps let me ask you the question. Who thinks that digital assets have a very bright future? So quite a few of you, perhaps a third of the room. Who thinks that digital assets have no future? So you can say it, don't be. And who's unsure? Who doesn't know about the future of digital assets? So a few people. So let's try to answer this question. So what are digital assets? First, digital assets are an innovation. And if we can jump to the next slide. And it's a very specific type of innovation. We have different types of innovation. It's a system innovation. It's an innovation which I cannot do by myself, for example. For digital assets to thrive, you need a whole system, a whole ecosystem to thrive. And normally, in terms of system innovation, you need different things. You need a certain level of technology, infrastructure. You need supply, enough ecosystem to build. You need a certain demand. From there, you need adoption, which in the very old world of the internet we call the killer apps also, so a certain adoption. And then finally, you need business models. You need a way to make money. Really, really important, actually. So let me get back to an experience that I have actually experienced, which perhaps a few of you have experienced also. By the way, who was born before 1990 in the room? Some people hesitated a bit on this. So for those people before 1990, you will know what I'm talking about. For the rest, no, you won't, but it's going to be a history, a lesson in history. But it was the internet, actually. The internet in 2000, if you experienced the internet in 2000, actually, it was quite bad. It was quite bad, because here, some of the headlines that we saw for the internet at that time was companies folding every day, and people being fired on a daily basis. So it was really, really bad. And why did it happen? It happened because of this, actually. It happened because there was a huge amount of investment in the internet. Up to 2000, 100 billion. So 100 billion 20 years ago. It was a lot of money at that time. And after that, it fell by more than half in a year. And basically it took 10, 15 years to go back to the same level. So what happened was a huge, huge bubble, which at the same time was a lot of investment in the industry. That stopped, it went down. At the same time, actually, there was real adoption. So although from an investment standpoint there was a bubble that deflated, there was real adoption. And if you look at the curve here, if you talk about 2000, you can't really see it actually. It just went up and up and up and up. You can't really see what happened. So there were some killer apps. What were those killer apps? First killer app was the email. After that you had the browser. A few years later, you had social media, etc., etc. So there was real adoption. The challenge that we saw in 2000 wasn't in terms of adoption, it was in terms of business models, actually, in terms of making money. There was a real adoption from users, but at the same time, it wasn't clear in terms of how to make money. Do you remember what were the largest internet companies in 2000? AOL, yes, very good.
The slide is here, so we are cheating here.
You're killing the presentation. Okay, so AOL, Yahoo, Lycos, etc. You saw it here. So that were those very, very large companies that had $200 billion of valuation. They ended being sold for nothing, $5 billion. At the same time, Google, which was pretty much number 50 in terms of traffic in '99, actually is the Google that we know in terms of size. It seems very, very obvious in terms of business model for the internet that it's something like Google. You have a site, you have a lot of traffic, you sell ads, you make money. Very obvious. Wasn't obvious at all in 2000. What people thought in 2000 was that to make money was the same as a newspaper. You have a portal, you get a lot of people on your portal, and then you put ads on your portal. It's not the model for Google, for example. So business model, really, really important. And actually, it took a while. It took until 2003, 2004, so that we started to really understand that there was a way to make money in the internet. So that's the internet. So where was the internet? It was a temporary setback because you had all of this, technology, infrastructure, supply, demand, very strong adoption of the killer apps. And at that time, you didn't have the business model, but the companies, because they had no more money, were forced actually to find the business model. That's why the internet grew very, very quickly. Now that two screens, it's getting more and more confusing. Blockchain today. Blockchain today, so definitely, we've had those news over the last few months. We know that, definitely in terms of volatility in the market, something is happening. Investments, we saw a very, very high amount of investments last year. At the beginning of this year also, it stopped. So definitely now we're facing headwinds, not just for blockchain actually, for the whole market in general, inflation environment and of globalization, etc., etc. Here we have a slide which is, I don't know if it's good or it's bad actually. It's, for example, in terms of transactions on Ethereum. And what we see is that it went up a lot in 2018, 17, 18. Then we had the first winter, went up again. And for the last, let's say, year, it's been more or less stable. So it's good because for the last 6 months it hasn't really declined, but it's not really exponential also. It's not really the curve of something where we want to see this big exponential curve and adoption that never stops. So we're not totally there yet. So what do we know for blockchain today? Technology, infrastructure, yes. A few years ago we said no. A few years ago we said it's too early. Today, especially if we've had the merge a few days ago, we're starting to have a technology, infrastructure, which is starting to be quite solid. Supply, demand, yes. Supply, big ecosystem, a lot of money, a lot of people working in the industry, a lot of innovation, yes. Demand, we're starting to see it much more. A few hundred million people who have started to use, whether it's buying and selling Bitcoin, NFTs, etc. So definitely. However, at the level today of adoption, I'm not totally sure for the killer app. In finance, so as an investment product, people who buy, let's call that financial product, speculative product, yes. People who try to make money from staking, yes. But for the rest, apart from NFT, I would say it's not totally clear. So we're still really looking for the killer app, and business models, we're not there yet. How do you really make money in blockchain? Who makes money? Not clear. So that's why, in terms of where we are today for blockchain, my personal view, a lot will come out of it. Why? Because we have a very strong technology infrastructure, supply, demand, and it's really something which is different in terms of money in the digital world, but it is still quite early, I would say, and what we really need to look at are the killer apps. What are the killer apps? What are those applications that a lot of people will use and not just for speculating? So now that we talked about it, how can you be part of it? What are the skills that you need, whether you want to work in the industry, or you want to hire people in the industry, or to invest in companies? So at the beginning of this year, we created the FinTech Job Report. And the FinTech Job Report was an analysis of 40,000 jobs in FinTech. We analyzed all of them. And what we saw is that, first, FinTech is really big. 300,000 people working in FinTech, which a few years ago was perhaps 10,000 people. So very, very big. And if it was a financial center, that would be the third financial center after New York and London. So very big. What about jobs in blockchain? So I'm very wary of asking questions now because I'm afraid to just have all the answers. So what about jobs in blockchain? Actually, it grew a lot between last year and this year. So 15,000, 30,000. End of this year, no idea. So I can't really tell you. But of course, we know the headwinds that we're seeing in blockchain at the moment. What we did at the Paris FinTech Forum not very long ago, we asked a lot of people, a lot of founders, and for example, in the Fiat Republic, there was one of them also, about what they thought were really the jobs in blockchain today. That was really interesting, because what we saw, and I jumped this, is that there's a lot of jobs in blockchain that we're seeing today. And it could be anything. It could be on the engineering side, it could be, for example, as product managers, legal, quite a lot. That was one of the surprises that we saw. But in terms of the way that we could categorize them, we found that jobs in blockchain and in FinTech in general can be categorized in three big categories. First one, the jobs that we find in any type of companies. For example, a CFO, you find that in any kind of companies. Jobs that you find in tech companies and jobs that you find in finance companies. What do you think are the jobs which are the most frequent in blockchain? Jobs which are generic, tech, or finance? Who thinks generic? Tech companies? And finance? So a few bankers, you know. So actually, it is, let me show you, like this. The big blocks which are red and blue, jobs of tech companies. Gray, jobs of finance companies. And green, generic jobs. So in terms of number of positions, actually, blockchain companies are much closer to tech companies. Why is there red and a blue? The red are the tech jobs of tech companies. Because of course in tech companies you don't have just tech jobs. So the tech jobs of tech companies, the non-tech jobs of tech companies. And then after that, finance companies tend to be a lot on the compliance side. And of course, you know, on the blockchain side, you might have things around, you know, capital markets, etc., depending on the company. Let me show you, and you might be interested, because if you're interested in a certain area of FinTech, of looking at this split. So, for example, if I take BNPL, you would see that very large part, almost 70% of the jobs in BNPL tend to be tech jobs of tech companies. Then you'd have around 20% which are non-tech jobs of tech companies. That could be business development, for example, that could be design, etc., and marketing. And then you'd have 15% which are jobs which are closer to finance, and you see here that a lot would be compliance. You'd see exactly the same in blockchain, which led us actually to the title of our report, which was Tech is Eating Finance. Which is that finance today is an industry which is extremely tech-driven. You could almost say that finance is tech, first and foremost, applied to a sector which is finance. Very, very important, of course, because that's not the way that we've been educated, that's not the way that we work, you know, that's not the way that we think, but the reality is that today, FinTech, blockchain, but also the future of financial services tend to be much, much more tech-driven. That's of course something that we all can feel. That's something that banks talk about when they all say we're tech companies, but that's really the truth. we're moving into a tech world. So in this tech world, what kind of skills are important? Because you have really dozens and dozens of skills, and so we tried to find an easy framework, and that's our framework, which is called Shine. Shine, we apply it to everything we do. We apply it to our courses, we apply it, for example, to the way we design courses, etc. And so we always go back to Shine. In your opinion, what is the S of Shine? So those are the very, very important skills for anybody in fintech or in general. What is the S in your opinion?
Soft skills.
Soft skills, very good. The H is easy name. Hard skills. What is I in your opinion?
Interpersonal skills.
Interpersonal. So interpersonal skills very important, but that would be part of soft skills.
Innovation.
Innovation would be very important also, but it's not that one.
IT.
So I is really important. Actually, when we interview CEOs, they said that usually one of the challenges that we have when we hire people, that's industry knowledge. Industry knowledge, of course, especially if you are in blockchain, if you don't know Lean and really know blockchain, it's really hard. And the most important,
Marketing?
marketing. No, so marketing is really important, but that's not the most important.
We know the answer.
You know the answer? Okay, so M is mindset. Mindset, and that's usually, I think, usually one of the hardest skill to assess also. It's really, really hard. It's what we call culture in general. How do you make sure that there's a culture fit? Really, really hard. But that's one of the key pillars. And the final one, which is experience. So I hope that you'll remember Shine now. And let me just finish, because the question was how to be part of the future of digital finance or digital assets. If I wanted to summarize in a very simple way, I think there are two pillars. The first one is killer apps and business models. It's really, really hard. If you ask me, what is the future of blockchain and which company will really make it in the next few years, the reality is that I have no idea. It depends on so many things. It depends on luck. Who would have predicted Google? Nobody. So it depends on a lot of things. But what you can do, however, is to be very, very close to the market, really look at the data, look at what are the killer apps, those apps that will start to have a lot of adoption, and which people are really using. So that's one. And the second one, making sure that there's a business model, that they can make money. Because at the end of the day, being funded by VC, very good. It's going to be much more challenging over the next few years. But for the industry to grow, you really need to have a proper business model. And the second one is Shine in whatever you do, whether you want to be part of the industry, you want to hire people, you want to invest in people. I think it's really important to have this drive in terms of Shine. So that's it. Thanks a lot for listening to this presentation. And if you'd like to continue the discussion, don't hesitate to contact me on LinkedIn. And also, if you want to be part of digital assets, we're also hiring. So don't hesitate. We're hiring in our London and Singapore office. Thank you.